Hey friends, today, I want to share a story with you, a tale full of emotion and unexpected turns. I hope you enjoy it and stay with me until the very end. Ready? Let's dive in. November in Boston ushers in chilly breezes and swirling leaves that dance down city streets. From the window of St. Mary's Community Hospital, Nurse Jessica Carter watched the scene unfold, her breath fogging the glass. Dressed in her crisp white uniform, she picked up the patient chart resting on the counter. A warm smile touched her lips, but a shadow of reflection lingered in her eyes. "Miss Carter, thank you. You saved my son," said a grateful mother, her hand gently clutching that of her young boy, now ready to go home. Jessica's face lit up as she leaned down and softly patted the boy's head. "Jimmy, your fever's gone down, but you have to keep taking your medicine, okay? Can you promise me that?" The little boy nodded earnestly and gave her a shy smile. These were the moments that reminded Jessica why she loved being a nurse. Over her 7 years at St. Mary's, she had become a trusted caregiver and a respected colleague. Once the mother and child had gone, Jessica glanced at the clock. Just one more hour left on her shift. Today, she hoped to pick up her 8-month-old son, Joseph, a little earlier than usual. Just the thought of his bright eyes and toothless grin was enough to lift her spirits. "Jessica, you had a call from Dr. Daniel," called out Janet, the head nurse. Jessica's expression subtly stiffened. "What did he say?" "He wants to see Joseph over Thanksgiving." Jessica nodded without saying a word. 2 years earlier, her world had changed when she divorced Dr. Daniel Carter, a pediatrician. At the start of their marriage, she believed their shared profession would draw them closer. But for Daniel, medicine wasn't just a job, it was his entire life. "There's an emergency surgery I need to assist. This paper has to be ready for the conference." The reasons never changed. Even after she became pregnant, Daniel's enthusiasm never translated into presence. He missed appointments, milestones, and was absent until hours after Joseph's birth. Over time, Jessica's desire for a nurturing family life clashed with Daniel's all-consuming career. Eventually, they both faced the truth. Their visions for life were no longer compatible, and love alone wasn't enough to hold the marriage together. Their split was civil, but her family? Far less so. Her parents, Robert and Karen, were baffled by her decision. To them, Daniel was a dream, well-educated, well-off, and from an esteemed background. "Why throw away such a perfect marriage?" her mother asked time and again. Her father's silence was even harder to bear, disappointment written across his face with every glance. Her brother Thomas and his wife Elizabeth stood firmly in Daniel's corner. Thomas, especially Daniel's regular golfing partner, didn't hide his disapproval. After the divorce, family gatherings became unbearable. Jessica felt accused with every mention of Daniel's name. When she embraced life as a single mother, her family's coldness grew even sharper. "How are you going to raise a baby on your own? Joseph needs a father. You could still fix this if you talked to Daniel." Yet, through all the criticism and doubt, Jessica never wavered. She had chosen a path that honored her own values and peace of mind. When her shift ended, she headed to daycare to pick up Joseph. The instant she saw his joyful little face, all the stress melted away. In that smile, she found her purpose and the strength to keep going, no matter how hard the road. Back in her cozy apartment, as she fed Joseph his dinner, Jessica's thoughts drifted toward the upcoming Thanksgiving. Her parents hosted the holiday every year, and though she'd skipped last year's gathering, this time would be different. She planned to go, and she would be bringing Joseph with her. What her family didn't know was that she had something else prepared, something unexpected. Tucked beneath her bed was a large envelope, part of the divorce settlement from Daniel. It was meant as a gift, something that might bridge the gap between her and her family. Holding Joseph in her arms, she glanced toward the bedroom where the envelope was hidden and smiled quietly to herself. "Tomorrow's going to be a special day, sweetheart," she whispered, kissing his downy cheek. Still, a storm of emotions swirled inside her, a tug-of-war between the hope of reconciliation and the need to protect her dignity. Thanksgiving morning arrived, bathed in soft golden light that filtered through the windows. The scent of rosemary drifted from the little pot on the kitchen sill. Jessica had woken early, wanting everything to be perfect. "You slept well, didn't you?" she murmured as she scooped Joseph from his crib. running her fingers through his fine hair. She felt her heart swell. His eyes, wide and blue, were a mirror of Daniel's, a reminder of the past and the future both. "We're going to visit Grandma and Grandpa today," she told him in a bright, gentle voice, though she knew he couldn't understand just yet. From her closet, she pulled out the dress she had bought weeks ago, a deep crimson velvet with a tasteful neckline and an elegant silhouette. She slipped it on and looked at herself in the mirror, trying to tame the anxious flutter in her chest. It had been 2 years since she'd last sat at her family's Thanksgiving table. She had carefully prepared for this moment. The large envelope now rested on the dining table, beside a pumpkin pie she had baked the night before. Her mother always said, "A homemade dish opens hearts faster than any gift." Jessica hoped that held true. She gathered Joseph, packed his diaper bag, milk, extra clothes, his favorite stuffed animal, and took one last look around the apartment. Then she picked up the envelope again, checking the contents inside. This could change everything, she whispered to herself. Her parents' home sat in a quiet suburb just outside Boston, nestled in the same neighborhood where she'd grown up. The 2-story brick house, paid for with her father's retirement, looked exactly as it always had. Her brother Thomas and his family would be there too. As she parked by the curb, Jessica took a deep breath. Joseph, asleep in his car seat, breathed softly. She gently lifted him, balancing him against her chest, pie in one hand and envelope tucked securely under her arm. The garden path was littered with crisp leaves. The tall trees lining the yard rustled with late autumn wind, and childhood memories rose with each step, tree climbing with her dad, baking afternoons with her mom, laughter echoing through warm summer evenings. Each memory hugged her, softening the fear tightening in her chest. The sound of voices and the smell of home-cooked food reached her as she neared the front porch. Warm light spilled from the windows, and for a brief second, she allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to be welcomed again. But when she reached the front door, her footsteps halted. A handwritten sign was taped to the wood. Jessica stared at it, her eyes scanning the words over and over, willing them to say something else. "Family dinner, no single mothers allowed." Her heart sank. At first, she thought it had to be a joke, cruel, tasteless humor, but the sound of laughter from inside told her otherwise. Through the window, she could see it all, her father reading by the fire, her mother bustling around the kitchen, Thomas and Elizabeth lounging on the sofa with their kids. It was a picture-perfect holiday scene. A scene that had no place for her. Her cheeks burned, shame, disbelief, and sorrow overwhelmed her. Joseph stirred softly in her arms, waking from his nap. His wide, curious eyes looked up at her. "It's okay, baby, Mommy's here," she murmured, her voice catching. She stood there, uncertain. Should she knock, turn away, demand answers, or simply walk away with her head high? As she stood frozen, the light from the window fell across the ground, casting a long shadow. There it was, her silhouette beside Joseph's. The shape of a mother, and a child. Alone, but not broken. It looked solitary, but there was strength in it, too. In that instant, something settled quietly inside her. Jessica slowly reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. With steady hands, she scribbled a brief note on the back. "I thought we could be a real family. This is my last gift." She gently placed it on the doorstep, nestling the homemade pumpkin pie beside it. Cradling Joseph close, she turned away without a second glance. The only sound that accompanied her down the path was the dry rustle of leaves underfoot. At the car, after buckling Joseph into his seat, Jessica finally allowed the tears to fall. But they weren't tears of defeat. Behind the wet shimmer in her eyes was something unmistakable: determination. "We're going to be okay, sweetheart. We've got each other." She turned the key in the ignition. Before shifting into drive, she glanced once more at the home she'd grown up in. The glow of its windows caught in her tears, scattering light like fractured glass. That glimmer mirrored the strength she carried inside. As the car eased forward, she and Joseph left behind not just the sign on the door, but the weight of being unwelcomed. Her heart was bruised, but steadied by a fierce sense of purpose. That evening, she and Joseph would have Thanksgiving on their own. And tomorrow? Tomorrow was the start of something new, uncertain. But there's alone. Whether or not the envelope ever shifted anything inside that house, Jessica had let it go. driving through the hushed twilight. Images flickered through her mind, her parents' aging faces, her brother's stern expression. She asked herself, had I failed them? Could I have tried harder? But even as the doubt crept in, her heart remained firm. She had made her choices not out of bitterness, but with clarity. The marriage, the divorce, the decision to raise her son alone, each one was rooted in truth. To walk the road that's right for you, even when it's hard. That was the legacy she wanted to leave her child. She felt it deep in her bones. A mother's task was to lead by strength, to protect her child from harm, even when the harm came in the shape of family rejection. Back in her apartment, she pulled a takeout Thanksgiving dinner from the fridge. She had ordered it in advance, just in case today went the way it did. She warmed the dishes, lit 2 little candles on the kitchen table, and sat down with Joseph. "Happy Thanksgiving, my darling boy," she said, pressing a kiss to his cheek. The next morning, sunlight poured softly into the apartment. Snow had dusted the city overnight, its light bouncing off every surface and flooding the rooms with brightness. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as Jessica stood at the counter, pouring it into her favorite mug. Joseph's voice crackled through the baby monitor, small and eager. She smiled and headed to his room. When she walked in, he reached up toward her with both hands, his sleepy smile crumpling her heart in the best way. "There's my little prince," she whispered, scooping him into her arms. Back in the kitchen, as she mashed bananas and poured cereal into a bowl, her mind replayed the previous day. The sting of that sign on the door still lingered, as did the memory of placing the envelope down beside it. "I wonder if they even opened it," she said softly to herself. She knew exactly what was inside. During the divorce proceedings, Daniel had surprised her by offering far more than she expected. She'd hesitated, but he insisted it was for Joseph, for their future. Eventually, she accepted. From that money, Jessica had done something her family never would have imagined. She had paid off the remainder of her parents' mortgage. And she had worked with a close friend at a travel agency to secure a luxury round-the-world trip for her entire family, open-dated for the year, flexible enough to accommodate everyone, including Thomas's children. It wasn't about buying forgiveness. It wasn't about proving her worth. It was about love. While stirring Joseph's cereal, she reminded herself, it was never about whether they'd accept it. It was about showing them I still care. Then, in the stillness of the snowy morning, her phone suddenly rang. The screen lit up, Mom calling. Jessica's pulse quickened. After what happened yesterday, she doubted anything good could come from this call. For a moment, she hovered her finger over the decline button, but then she inhaled deeply and answered. "Jessica." Diane's voice sounded unsteady, stripped of its usual composure. In the background, Jessica heard a loud thud, then shouting. Male voices. Her father, Thomas. "What you left on the porch, is it real?" her mother asked, voice shaking. Jessica slowly eased into a chair. "What are you talking about?" There was a pause, then the soft rustling of paper. "The loan discharge, the travel itinerary, those plane tickets," Diane's voice cracked. "They're gone. Someone ripped them up, shredded everything." Jessica's chest tightened. Not her. Someone in that house had destroyed the gift. Part of her had always feared this. "Mom," Jessica said, voice low but steady, "do you know what was taped to the front door yesterday?" Another pause. "What was there?" Diane asked, uncertain. "A sign that said, 'Family dinner, no single mothers allowed.'" She heard her mother gasp. The voices in the background fell quiet. "That can't be right," Dan whispered. "I saw it myself," Jessica said. "I came to the door holding Joseph, and that was the welcome we got." There was a long, stunned silence. Then, in a fragile voice, "I didn't know. We waited for you all morning. When you didn't show up, I wanted to call, but the sign, someone else must have." A new voice cut in, tight, defensive. "It was Thomas. I wrote it," he admitted, barely audible. The words hit Jessica like ice water. "It was supposed to be a joke," he added quickly, almost pleading. "Just a stupid, terrible joke." Fury burned hot in Jessica's chest. "A joke? You made a mockery of your own sister. You humiliated me, and you rejected my son." "I know," Thomas said quietly, I didn't think it would. I didn't think. He sounded small, unsure. Diane returned to the phone. Jessica, none of us knew. When you didn't come, we were worried. Then this morning, when we saw what you left. Their father's voice interrupted in the background. What made her do this? What happened that drove her away? Jessica closed her eyes. They had opened the envelope. They had seen what was inside, and now, only now, they understood what they had thrown away. She spoke evenly, calmly. The envelope held gifts I created from the divorce settlement Daniel gave me. He insisted I take more than I asked for, said it was for Joseph's future. A pause. Then she continued. I used part of it to pay off your house, and I booked a round-the-world trip for the whole family. It was open-dated, valid for a year. I remembered how you always dreamed of traveling the world. Mom, I thought it could be something magical, for all of us. On the other end, she heard a sharp breath. Her mother sounded shaken. But why would anyone tear it apart? I don't know, Jessica said quietly. After I saw the sign, I left it all there. I couldn't knock. I couldn't face that. No one spoke. Snow glinted outside the window, sunlight scattering across the white rooftops. Inside the apartment, all was still, except for the soft sound of Joseph eating in his high chair. He looked up and smiled, oblivious to the heartache of adults. Her father's voice came next, low and disbelieving. This doesn't add up. Who would destroy something like that? Why? Jessica let out a slow breath. I don't have an answer, but it's okay. I gave the gift with love. If it wasn't accepted, that's enough. And she meant it. The ache remained, but something else had settled beneath it, stillness, a quiet sort of strength. She had extended a hand, and when it was slapped away, she had walked on. No more hoping. No more waiting. Only truth. Diane's voice returned, brittle and trembling. Jessica, Mom, she interrupted gently. We're okay. Joseph and I, we really are. Please don't worry. Thomas's voice returned, softer now. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have put that sign up. I thought it was funny, but no one laughed. Mom and Dad were excited to see you. I ruined that. I'm so sorry, Jessica. Thomas's voice wavered with regret, but Jessica's heart had already hardened. Thomas, you've spent months judging me for being a single mom. You sided with Daniel and blamed me for everything. Was that sign just a way to say what you really think? Silence stretched on the other end. Then Jessica caught her father's low, serious voice. Son, is that true? Thomas hesitated. I didn't mean. Jessica inhaled deeply, steadying herself. Listen, all of you, I love you. The gifts I prepared came from that love, but if you can't accept my choices or how I'm living, that's your decision. Joseph and I will simply walk our own path. No, Jessica. Her mother's voice cracked with urgency. We love you. It's just. Jessica glanced down at Joseph, who was giggling, carefree and innocent. Mom, I hear you, but now, what matters is what you do, not what you say. She ended the call with a deep exhale. Years of burden felt a little lighter somehow. Lifting Joseph, she pointed toward the window where the world was blanketed in white. Look, Joseph, a new day is starting. The afternoon settled quietly in Jessica's apartment. After a morning spent wandering through a snow-dusted park, she had laid Joseph down for his nap and now sat near the window with knitting needles in hand, an unfinished sweater for her son. The soft yarn slipped through her fingers in a comforting rhythm. Hours passed since the call. No word from her family. Doubts flickered. Had she been too harsh? But deep down, she knew there was no turning back. She had spent too long trying to fit their mold. Now she was carving her own life. Her knitting paused. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, swirling flakes cloaking the city in fresh white. Watching the serene winter scene, Jessica felt the quiet strength of nature's balance, harsh, yet beautiful. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Setting down her knitting, Jessica rose, expecting her friend Jennifer. She walked to the door. Her breath caught. Standing there was everyone: Father Robert, Mother Karen, Brother Thomas, Thomas's wife Elizabeth, and their 2 children. Snow clung to their coats, remorse heavy in their expressions. Karen's eyes were red-rimmed from tears. Robert's usual proud stance was gone, replaced by humility. Thomas's gaze dropped as he stepped inside. Jessica. Her father's voice was soft, cracked with vulnerability. May we come in? Without a word, Jessica moved aside to let them enter. One by one, they passed, avoiding her gaze. Thomas glanced briefly before looking down again. In the living room, a fragile stillness settled. No one dared break the silence. Jessica moved to the kitchen, hands slightly shaking, not with anger, but tension from this unexpected reunion. Let's talk over some tea, she said softly. She handed out cups, then finally sat. Why couldn't you accept me as family? Her voice was calm, curious, not accusatory. Robert took a slow breath. Jessica, I was wrong. When Daniel left, I felt disappointed. He was like the son I wished for, a successful doctor, respected and admired. Jessica interrupted quietly. Someone you valued more than your daughter. Pain flickered across her father's face. No, that's not what I meant. I'm an old man with old beliefs. I thought families should stay whole. When you left Daniel, it felt like a failure, a defeat for me. Your defeat, while it was my life to live. Yes, his voice cracked. That was my mistake. Lowering his head, he admitted softly, I tried to force my values on you. I should have respected your decisions, her mother said next, her voice quivering with emotion. Jessica, I failed you as a mother. When Thomas put up that sign, I should have stopped him, but I stayed silent. I was still reeling from losing Daniel, and I took my pain out on you. That was shameful, for me as your mother, and as a person. Jessica listened quietly. She had pictured this moment countless times, but hearing their apologies in real life stirred a complex storm inside her, anger mixed with the beginnings of forgiveness. The sign was my doing, Thomas admitted, his voice heavy and eyes downcast. It was meant as a dumb joke, but really, it came from jealousy. Jessica, you've always been talented, beautiful, smart, loved by everyone. I've always felt like I was living in your shadow, and seeing you keep going, even as a single mom, that only made my envy worse. Jessica blinked, caught off guard by her brother's confession. She never expected jealousy. Thomas, no. Please, listen, he pressed on. I never wanted to hurt you. I criticized your life because I was ashamed of my own insecurities. And yesterday, I put up that sign. Nobody laughed, but I stayed silent. Then this morning, when I found the envelope, his voice broke. I tore up everything inside. Seeing you had enough money to pay off our mortgage, to buy those world trip tickets. I was overwhelmed with anger and jealousy. A heavy silence filled the room. Elizabeth, Thomas's wife, squeezed his hand, quietly weeping. Their children sat nearby, eyes wide and confused, unable to grasp the grown-up pain around them. Jessica stood and walked toward the window. Outside, snow still fell softly, blanketing the world in white. She wrestled with herself, whether to forgive, or to protect her heart by closing the door. Then, from the bedroom, Joseph's cry pierced the quiet. He'd awakened from his nap. Jessica hurried to him and soon returned, holding her son close. Joseph's presence shifted the atmosphere. His innocent smile cut through the heaviness, and as he looked around with curious eyes, he suddenly laughed brightly. Holding Joseph, Jessica faced her family. This is my son. Joseph, your grandson and nephew. He'll need the love of family many times over. For the first time, a flicker of hope touched her parents' faces. Karen reached out, voice trembling. May I hold him? Jessica hesitated, then gently handed Joseph to her mother. Karen held her grandson for the first time, tears springing to her eyes. Such a beautiful child. Robert stepped forward and took Joseph's tiny hand with reverence. Jessica, will you give us the chance to know him, and to know you again? Jessica inhaled deeply, emotions swirling inside, but watching Joseph smile in his grandmother's arms, she made her choice. You destroyed the gifts, she said softly, but you can't destroy my heart. We have a long road ahead to rebuild trust and understanding, but for Joseph's sake, for mine, and for all of us, I believe it's worth trying. A quiet relief settled over the room. It wasn't complete healing, but the first step toward a new beginning. Thomas rose and stepped toward her. Jessica, I'm truly sorry. From now on, I want to support you and Joseph, as your brother. Jessica nodded faintly. Then show me with your actions, not just your words. Outside, the snow had stopped. Thin sunlight filtered through the clouds, casting a warm glow that shimmered across the silver world.